Disability can be a barrier to participation in tourism. The New Zealand Tourism for All project seeks to raise awareness and mobilise change towards a more inclusive tourism industry for the future. The New Zealand Tourism for All project is led by a team of researchers at the University of Waikato in New Zealand. We chose to start the conversation in Christchurch. In Christchurch, there is a unique opportunity to rebuild the city with access in mind since its devastation by a series of earthquakes. We spoke to travellers with a range of access needs to hear their stories.
They've all got different systems, so if I travel to Wellington or Auckland or Dunedin, there's no way I'm ever going to access public transport in those centres because I wouldn't know the first thing how to. Same with trains. Yes. We don't, there's no consistency from one centre to the next.
Plane.
On a plane? It's both within New Zealand and internationally. With the PA system on the plane, I don't understand that because I'm deaf. So I feel like I don't have equal access. So it's like a barrier to me. So where is the communication for deaf people? In terms of the weather and what's happening at the destination and those sorts of things?
Disadvantages sometimes when you travel is that finding bathrooms and toilets, you've got lovely little signs. I find that when travelling, I would like nice big signs and contrast.
Take time, because I take a lot of time processing what the information is. That it always seems to be go, 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 go. But I just take a little time just to process the information.
I understand that not everywhere is going to be perfect in terms of access, and so people just willing to lend a hand and sort of think outside the box where possible is always helpful.
City Council seem to spend a lot of money on transport and road, but they seem to save money when it comes to footpaths, and cracked and not and lumpy footpaths can make it really difficult just to walk around. Makes it not only difficult for me, but wheelchairs or elderly, and a fall when you're on holiday is not a fun experience.
I've had bus drivers that have said, I didn't even know you wanted to catch the bus. And I said, well, I'm right at the bus stop and you're the only bus that goes past. Well, you've got to signal the driver. And I said, I'm visually impaired. And it's only made a big deal in front of everybody. And when I got off, I said to him, next time I will signal you, do you prefer one finger or two?
How accessible is the facility? Can a person get up to this thing? Can it get up, whether it be a bus, whether it be a hotel they stay in, or no matter what, or whatever's there? I think disability training needs to happen too.
It just takes a bit of patience maybe and a bit of extra outside thinking, but it's possible.
While we were in Christchurch, we invited key tourism stakeholders to a roundtable discussion to plan for change.
So I work at the airport, and we have a growing interest to understand this whole space. And I'm disappointed to hear there were 200 people invited to come, and there's just a few of us here. And so even though you've got quite a positive comment there, it seems that interest is not as wide as we would hope it to be. But in our business, we've got a growing interest to understand this, this opportunity.
I want visitor numbers, so I want people to be aware that our organisation actually can meet the needs across the spectrum of people walking through the moving through the door.
Yeah. 3 key words: requested, excited, expected. So essentially at the moment we're in a world where people have to request all the time, so they've requested to have an accessible experience, whatever it might be. Imagine if they went to a place and they were excited that actually it was happening
already
already
there.
for them, then they move to a place where it's expected. And therefore it gives a service provider the ability to move back into a place of a positive request, because hey, this was amazing, you know, if this now happens to me every time, but actually it would be really nice if I could have this now type thing. So it's this continuous improvement of service delivery. I really liked that, requested, excited, and then it becomes expected.
People, international visitors have this expectation from overseas. We've got to meet that need, otherwise Tourism New Zealand, and therefore all of us, are actually not engaging the way that we need to.
Well, I think there's a lack of courage to have the conversation.
It is. It's new conversations.
That's right.
That's right. I mean, that's
Statistics collected from the 2013 New Zealand Disability Survey identify almost 1 in 4 New Zealanders as disabled. This figure was up from 20% in 2001.
We estimate that accessible tourism is worth over $700 million to the New Zealand economy. That figure is conservative and only likely to increase given our ageing population.
One of the important things about doing the economic valuation of the accessible tourism market was to produce valid and reliable figures. And we did that through industry standard approaches, bringing together major secondary data sources of the federal government. That was the National Visitor Survey, together with the tourism satellite accounts, engaging a very well-experienced and world-renowned tourism economist, Professor Larry Dwyer, and getting the rigour and also a detailed understanding of what the market was and how it was to be valued.
People with disabilities do have money to spend and they do want to travel, so it's increasing your market and the ability to make more money, if you like. If you think about the disability community when you're designing your services and things.
There are a range of more recent estimates that have come out, but the ones that we're certainly confident of are that in Europe there was a €80 billion spend that was associated with the accessible tourism market.
What you're talking about as well, incentives. And just being around the industry for quite a while, and then you hear in private conversations people going, "Oh, why do I have to adhere to this? It's going to cost me money." And so you think, well, why are you doing it? It's not just to adhere to legislation. Disabled people with access needs have money to spend. And so knowing your numbers, you can actually get more business through the door.
In the future, tourism stakeholders and businesses need to be convinced of the economic as well as the social case of targeting the access market to enhance their business.
Take the time to understand what is meant by accessibility, and it's not just someone in a wheelchair. It's quite a wide-ranging definition, and so understand what that is and understand the benefits to your business of actually considering how you meet that in terms of a market. It's a potential market to be tapped into, just as you would consider any other market opportunity. So there's a market there may be some cost or some refocusing needed to tap that market, but if that can all come together, then you can provide a better visitor experience and we can do better as a country in terms of providing accessible tourism.
If Tourism New Zealand are to be serious, then they need to have a module on disability that allows the monitoring of not just numbers, but regional dispersion and a serious look at what the economic contribution is to New Zealand from accessible tourism already.
There's more and more people with the disabilities of some sort. We are an ageing population, myself obviously included. That the baby boomer one, we're all getting older, there's going to be eyesight problems, hearing problems, walking problems, lots. So for all businesses it does make sense, because after all we are a big portion of the population.
People will generally ask you when they need your help, and they'll tell you how best they need your help, because as a person that uses a chair and has lifelong experience with disability, I know what help I need best, not someone who's helping me. So I think that's really important. We are the experts in terms of our needs, and we will tell you how you can best help us.
Customer service is really important, and just talk to people like you talk to anybody. So I'm in a chair, but I don't need to be yelled at or spoken to really slowly, because I actually understand everything that you're saying. But if you just make some simple, even if you ask me how I would like to be helped, I can tell you, can you just do this for me? But if you actually make that offer, people will be more inclined to come back to your business or organisation because they've had a really good experience.
Things can look really pretty, but sometimes they're not accessible, and it's really important just to think about who's going to be there. If you make things more accessible for everybody, it'll just be easier.
Because Auckland's so big, I can't keep it all in my mind of where we are and everything. So I'd much prefer to maybe have a mobile app, and that could tell me where I am currently and where my destination is, and so I can sort of plan my trip.
Voice announcements.
Yeah, audio announcements.
That would make all the difference, actually, and bus drivers that actually know and are trained a little bit about people with disabilities, it would make a huge difference.
Perhaps some information could be useful for some people, clearer information. Sometimes plain language would help too.
It's a lot of consideration, a lot of thinking for other people, and a lot of really engaging with communities as a whole.
Think outside the box where possible is always helpful.
That would be a good one, indeed. Make tourism accessible. Make tourism accessible and inclusive.
For real change to occur, we need the discussion around accessible tourism to continue. We hope that we have planted a seed that will grow. We need to be role modelling our leaders and take the conversation to those tourism stakeholders who currently aren't willing to engage in a conversation about accessibility.
The importance of having a campaign like this is to actually get the industry at large on board, because like an accessible business alone doesn't necessarily mean an accessible tourism experience for someone travelling here, because it's this whole like supply chain and whole combination of all these different elements coming together to give that overall experience.
I think we need a coordinated approach for the tourism industry because we're all reliant on each other. The marketing for Tourism New Zealand needs to be correctly aligned with the options to travel to New Zealand, which needs to be correctly aligned with the public transport, which needs to be aligned with the accommodation and the tourism options. And if something's broken in the middle of that chain, well then you might as well not do it.
There are opportunities that we haven't yet grasped, but we're not starting from the back of the field. We're certainly not leading the pack, but we can move up towards the front, I think, if we make a few simple steps.